backyard was this massive city cemetery. In fact, she was telling me about those Confederate soldiers and the unnamed soldiers in the graveyard there in Atlanta. During the Battle of Atlanta, they loaded a lot of soldiers up that were injured, put them on a train, and came south to evacuate, and they just found a lot of places along the way to put temporary hospitals. Well, Tift College in Forsyth, Georgia was a great location for a temporary hospital. So those Confederate soldiers that went there, many of them died, and so they buried them, literally, y'all. It was in my backyard. All right, so years later, I've got a degree from Mercer University, but I'm not quite sure where I want to go, what I want to do yet. So I'm thinking, well, I like the beach, so why not take a job just at the beach? So I get a job, not the greatest of jobs, but there were some condominiums that had been built on St. Simons. And so my job is to call, kind of, hey, would you be interested in a timeshare at a condominium? And so that was my job. Well, it wasn't great. I was thinking one day out on the marsh side, the river side of St. Simon's Island, not over on the beach side. So that's over on the western side of it. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking out. It's a sunny day, beautiful day, and I can see something in the water glistening. I'm like, let's check that out. It doesn't look too deep. So I go out there and I find that it's a chain, and I start pulling, and it's in there deep. But eventually I get it up and I hold it up in the sunshine, and it is a set of leg irons. Shackles. All right. So, thinking, wow, this is old. I'm a little short on money, so I'm thinking I'm going to take these maybe to a museum, find a collector or an antique store, a bunch of those on St. Simon's, and I'm going to sell them. So I go over to my apartment. From there, I wrapped them in a beach towel, and I got them over there, and I'll open the door, and my little apartment's in the efficiency. So it's like a den and a kitchen, okay? Then there's a little hallway and a bathroom and a bedroom. So I go immediately, and I put them at the sink. But as I do, I noticed that this was the day of answering machine. So the little light on my answering machine is blinking. I got a message. I pick it up, and I find out that I'm been called in for a shift for work. So, all right, so I get ready to leave the shackles right there at the sink in the beach towel. Get ready, and I head to work. I get off my shift, I come back home, I open the door, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go ahead and clean these up, and maybe tomorrow's Saturday, there's a good time to maybe go to an antique store. Well, they're not there. The towel's there, but the shackles are gone. I start looking around. There they are, over by the door. And I'm like, I know I didn't do that. So then I start to get a little spooked about the whole thing. So I start looking around the apartment and see if somebody's been in my apartment. I go to the closet, nobody there. I go to the bathroom. You know, it's like Psycho. I pull the curtain back in the shower and expect somebody to jump out. Nobody does, thankfully. I go in my bedroom, look at the bed, and nothing. Okay. So I go back to the sink, and I start cleaning them up, and all that sand and marsh stuff out of these shackles. And I get them cleaned up, put the towel back on them. It's getting late. So I'm thinking, I'll go get a shower and get ready for bed. Well, I come back from the shower, and they're gone again. This time I look directly towards the door, and yes, stretched out in front of the door were these shackles. Again, I'm really spooked. But from college, I had this trunk that you could lock, keep my stuff in. And so I think, well, let's take these shackles and put them in that trunk and lock them. Okay. Well, I'm wide awake, thinking, let's do a little research. See if we can find anything that'll help maybe with the sale of these things, if I've got a story to go along with it. Well, lo and behold, I find that there was a ship captain that had kept a journal about a journey from the west coast of Africa to St. Simons. And in that journal, okay, he was the captain of a slave ship. And in this particular instance, a tribe of warriors had been captured. Never happened. These were people who had never been captured before. But the Igbo warriors of Nigeria, where they are today, the country of Nigeria. And so they were very concerned about their safety. The warriors outnumbered the crew on the ship and certainly could have overtaken the ship. And so all the way over across the Atlantic Ocean, there is a reluctance to ever let these Igbo warriors come up and get fresh air. Terrible conditions. They kept them chained in the bottom of the ship. Finally, they arrive off the coast of St. Simons and they drop anchor. They're prepared to start sending boats out to bring them in, one group at a time. So they're thinking, we're here. We can bring them up on deck. So they undo the chains down below and they bring them up, still in their leg irons. And as they do, these Igbo warriors go straight off the side of the ship. And as they plunge into the water, they are heard to say, "From the waters we came, and the waters we shall return." Never to be seen again. The men on deck are like, oh my, I mean, what has just happened? Well, there's my story. Possibly, those very shackles that I have found could be from that historic event. So, I go to bed that night, I sleep soundly all night long. The next morning I wake to birds chirping, traffic on the highway and outside, and I start to think, oh, it's Saturday morning. I'm going to take these to the antique store. But something is strangely different. As I start to wake up, I realize my legs. It's like I'm paralyzed. So I sit up in bed and I look down, and there, across my legs, are these leg irons. Fortunately, I had not been locked into them. They were just laying across my legs, but scared to death at this point. I get up, keeping my eye on them the whole time. I get dressed. I go past antique stores, and I go right back to the place at Dunbar Creek, where the creek enters into the river. And I went out there on that bank where I had been before, and I took them and I heaved them way out into the water. And as they went and plunged into the water, I said the following words: "From the waters you came, from the waters you shall return." Well, that wasn't my only incident of some type of ghost, paranormal activity. Several years later, Miss Wilkes and I were married and moved to Savannah, up the coast from St. Simons to Savannah now. And we're living in a nice historic area of town. And let's talk a little bit about geography. We've got Savannah, okay? If you want to go to the beach from Savannah, you got to drive, because it's on the river, 14 miles out to Tybee Island, okay? Now, it's still fairly isolated, but back in those days, it was really isolated. It was just a highway going out through the marsh. There's Fort Pulaski, and it's got its own set of all all kinds of ghost stories there. And then you're on Tybee Island. Well, we've got a friend, Roger, who's gone to Truett McConnell with us, and Roger's, after college, had decided that he was going in the Army. So we hadn't seen him in a while. So Roger said, hey, I want to come see y'all. Roger's from Tequila, same place Miss Cochran's from. And anyway, and so we said, sure, come on down. Well, Roger gets there, and we were like, hey, Roger, it's, it's getting late spring here. It's May. And they're starting up concerts out on Tybee Island. Would you like to go to a concert? It's right out there on the beach. Neat. Yeah, sure, sounds great. So we get in the car, and out we go. And we get into the marsh, and we can see it's getting, starting to get dusk. We see a person kind of off on the side of the road. The closer we get, we notice it's a woman. She's in a white flowing dress, blonde hair, but there's no car, broken down car, or anything like that. We stop to check on her. Ma'am, are you okay? Yes. Are you going to Tybee Island? Yeah. Would it be okay if I ride with you? Don't you ever do anything like that. But back then it was, safer to do something like that. So we said, sure. So she gets in the car, off we go. She's so pleasant, we just find out that her name is Rose White. And so Rose gets to Tybee with us. We were pretty close at this point. We get to Tybee and we go to the concert and we're sitting at a little table, and as we're talking, she's just so pleasant and so energetic and young and youthful. And anyway, Roger says, hey, would you like to dance? There was dancing going on. Sure. So she goes and dances with Roger. I noticed, though, as Roger came back, this look of bewilderment. At some point in the evening, he wanted to tell me something, so he leans over and he says, Rose is cold as ice. I mean, she's freezing. So we start to ask, are you okay, Rose? Or it's May, wind coming off the ocean, need a coat, anything? No, I'm fine. Well, the evening comes to an end and concert's over. We head back to Savannah. On the way there, it's a dark night out there in the marsh. Rose says, I want you to let me off the place where you pick me up. Like, no, absolutely not, Rose. This is not safe for you to be out there, getting out in the middle of the night. We're not going to do it. Well, she starts to get agitated with us, and we're like, okay, whatever. So right before she gets out, though, Roger says, well, I'm going to be in town all week. Would it be okay if we come to see you? And so she agrees, and she gives Roger her address. As we pull off, I can see Rose in the taillights, right there on the side of the road. Conversation, of course, about this mystery woman is all we can think of. Next morning, Sunday morning, we get up, go to church, have lunch. We're talking all the time. Let's go see Rose. Okay. So off we go. It's out at Wilmington Island. Wilmington Island is on the way to Tybee Island. Hardly you would think you're not even on an island, but it's kind of a little developed area. Now a lot. But back then, just houses. We turn down a street, and then we turn off on another little lane, and we go all the way to the end of it. And at the very end, there's a convent. You know what a convent is? A convent is where Catholic women, nuns, live. Okay? So this was a place for nuns. So all of a sudden, we're starting to put things together. Here's Rose. She's young. She was thinking about maybe being a nun. And now she's maybe having second thoughts. And so she left That's why she was so secretive, why we couldn't take her home. Okay, this starts to make sense. We go to the door, we knock on the door. This elderly nun comes to the door. We say, "Does Rose White live here?" And she says, "Rose? You know Rose?" "Well, yes, ma'am." "Well, how long ago?" "Well, we just met her last night." So she says, "Come here." So we wait for Kim to get out of the car. She comes with us, and we go into this study, and there are bookcases everywhere with lots of books all around, lots of books on theology. And we start to have conversations with this elderly nun, and she says, "Now tell me about how you met Rose." We figure at this point, we might be getting her in trouble, but we'll tell the truth. So we tell it exactly as it happened. Well, she said, "Could you identify Rose from a picture?" We said, "Sure we could." So she goes over to a bookcase and she pulls out a yearbook. And she opens it up and she shows us right there in the very first few pages of the yearbook, full-size picture of Rose White. "Well, that's her." "Well, is she here?" And she said, "No, but I'll take you to where she is." So we leave out of the convent, and we take a little trail out behind, under the big, massive live oaks with the Spanish moss hanging down, and all of a sudden, we're in a cemetery. And she points, and she says, "There she is. There's Rose White." And so, as we look at that grave, that tombstone, right there, we notice that the date that she had died was on May 23rd, 1983. Roger and Kim and I look at each other, realizing that the night before had been May 23rd. Now, I'd encourage anybody to go to Savannah and Tybee Island, but my caution to you is that if you ever make the trip, I would avoid being on that highway on May 23rd.
Okay, the one last slide that I would like to show you is just a little bit more information about the Ebo people.
I will tell you this. If you go to look it up and see it's IBO there, you can usually find it EBO or IBO.
Yeah. So it is an actual historical thing that happened. His story is based on true facts, historical fiction in a way. If you look it up, there are lots of different legends about the Ebo people. Some believe they drowned, some people believe they flew away, some people believe they died, some people believe they survived, some people believe that they walked underwater, almost like what the imagery I get like in the Pirates of the Caribbean where they're coming out from under the water. So if you look up those legends and those stories about those very fierce warriors, you'll find a lot of fact in the story. There is a couple other things that are part of today's lesson, but we're having to get ready for the faculty volleyball game. So you're actually already supposed to be in 7th period, but your teachers know that you're late. Before you leave, we have attempted to go ahead and make everybody snacks so that you can just peacefully pick one up on your way out. If you don't want one, you don't have to have one, but they are free. Obviously, we're not getting a chance to take our picture, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our pictures